and he didn't fiddle around. He wasn't waiting for 12 rounds. He went in and he tried to knock out as many people as he could before that thing got past 1 minute in a round. And he did a heck of a job, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it wasn't until he got a little fat, dumb, and lazy that he started getting into the later rounds, which really what's cost him the title at a later date. But having a sense of urgency is what we want to talk about today. And what is a sense of urgency, okay? Going to slide 2. We got slide 2 up?
Yep.
So for me, a sense of urgency when it comes to our business is how fast do you follow up, right? Do you consciously wait? Mute yourselves, guys. If you're not muted, we can hear somebody's background. Everybody should be muted. Please. If you're in a store somewhere, mute yourself. Do you consciously wait to follow up? Do you say to yourself, hey, somebody wants to do business with me, but I let me wait a day or two before I follow up? Or are you the guy that says, hey, you know what? I'm going to follow up immediately. Somebody called me at 9 o'clock and can you please mute yourself?
It's Chris. Chris, can you mute yourself, please?
Hey, John, as the commentator, can you just mute everyone and unmute Alex?
Yes, I think I can. I'm doing that right now.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, you there? Alex?
All right, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
I'm back at you. Sorry about it, guys. Please, if everybody gets on there, just pay attention to that. Okay. So do you consciously wait? Do you say to yourself, you know what, I don't want to get back to somebody right away. When somebody calls you and says, I want to do business with you, I want life insurance, I need disability, or I want to talk to you about a retirement plan, something has happened that has created a sense of urgency for them, right? Am I right, guys? That's what's happened. Something has created a sense of urgency for them, and they're calling you. And you, by putting it off and not getting back to them right away, or not taking advantage of the sense of urgency that they've already created and makes your job easier. And so you're not taking advantage of that. You're actually hurting yourself. So you really want to take advantage of that immediately. And I will tell you that when somebody calls you and they want life insurance, right? We all know what happened. Either a neighbor fell over dead, right? Their best friend fell over dead or found out they had cancer, or something happened to them. Maybe their doctor said, you don't look so healthy. And then when you call back, they say, hey, you know, I just found out I have skin cancer, or I just found out that I have heart problems or something, and they want life insurance. Or something happened to somebody else and they want life insurance, disability, or something like that. They've already created that sense of urgency for you, and you want to take advantage of that by calling back immediately. That's really important. It's a fear that you've created for yourself of being too anxious and coming across as like a used car salesman because you're too anxious. You have anxiety, and you say, well, you know what, I'm just going to wait a little while. I'll wait a day or two before I get back to them. And the leads get cold. Why? Because they start to think about it. They start thinking about the neighbor falling over. 3 days later, they're not in that panic mode that they were 2 to 3 days earlier. And suddenly things have changed. And now you've created less urgency for yourself, right? So you really want to say to yourself, hey, you know, how quick can I connect with them? And how quick can I close a case? Here's what I'm going to say to you. Absent the really big cases, you guys shouldn't go more than 2 weeks from beginning to end. If you go 2 weeks from beginning to end, that means I talked to the client, I did my fact find, I did my follow-up meeting, and I wrote the app. That shouldn't go more than 2 or 3 weeks. If it goes, the longer it goes, the less your chances of closing. The more the chances that they meet somebody else in the business, the more the chances that they think about it, and the sense of urgency goes away for them, All of those things are negative things for you guys. I never ended up with more than 2 or 3 weeks from beginning to end on a case. And anytime it started to go 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, the longer it went, the less my closing ratios were. They went down exponentially when it went out past 4 weeks. Then you started getting cancellations. Clients said, well, this week's not good. Maybe it's next week. Then it turned into 6 weeks. Then it turned into 8 weeks. And then it turned into, you know what, right now, let's get together in the spring or the summer. Right now is a bad time. And that's happened to all of us. And that really is the fact that we didn't close on that sense of urgency, or we didn't create a sense of urgency for the client. So you want to connect as quickly as you can. That's slide number 3, right? We should be on now slide number 4, John?
Yeah, I just got there.
Okay. So how do we create a sense of urgency for the client? And that's really important. I always created a sense of urgency. If they didn't come in with one, like if they called me and said, hey, my neighbor fell over dead. He was only 45 years old, or he just found out he's got cancer, or he just had a major heart attack, and now I want to buy life insurance. I didn't need to create a sense of urgency. But if that wasn't the case, and it was a regular fact find, I needed to create a sense of urgency. I knew that over the years that I saw people leave my office, and somewhere between the time they left my office and the next time I got back to them, they either had a heart attack, a stroke, dropped dead, got hit by a car, something happened to them. It didn't happen often, but over the years, it happened multiple times. And so I knew that there was a real possibility that something bad could happen to my client. And I wanted to make sure they knew that. And that's how I created a sense of urgency. The way I created a sense of urgency was to say to the client, look, you don't seem to be worried about this. I'm worried for you. I'm concerned for you. I've had enough clients leave here, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, that never came back to the meeting because they didn't make it. Something happened. They walked out the door and got hit in a car accident and got killed. Something happened, and it happened over the 30 years of my career. It happened more times than 1, more times than 2. It happened at least 6 or 7 times that something happened to my client between the time they met me the first time and the time they were supposed to close the case that made the case go away because they were absent. They were injured, sick, or dead. And I don't want that to happen to you. And so I have a sense of urgency. If you don't, I'm worried about you. I'm concerned about you, right? So that creates a sense of urgency. You want that wife or that husband going home and saying to their husband, listen, we got to get this done. I mean, if something happens to you or me next week or today, I'm screwed, or you're screwed, or our family's screwed. If they don't go home and say that to their spouse, you didn't create a sense of urgency, and then that case is just going to languish, and it may or may not ever happen. So you have to create a sense of urgency by having that concern for your client. And when it does happen that something bad happens, they're going to be the first one to call you and say, you know what, thank God you had that sense of urgency for me because you just saved my life, or you just saved us from losing our house, or you just saved us from not being able to pay our bills. So you were doing something really good for the client by creating that sense of urgency that they seem to lack. Next slide. Sympathy is not a way of creating sense of urgency. When somebody says, I got all this stuff going on, I'm really busy, and you go, I understand, I get it, you know what, why don't we reconnect in 4 to 6 weeks? That's sympathy. And that is going to lead to nothing closing. That is not what you want, right? Those are examples of sympathy. You want to create empathy. You want to be able to say to the client, I'm worried about you. You may not be worried about you because you're not in my business. You don't understand what can happen. Or you may not be worried, or you are worried, but maybe you're not as worried as I am, because I realize that your husband pays the bills, and if he has a stroke today, or if he gets hit in a car accident, if he does a Tiger Woods, look at Tiger Woods. Here's a guy that the day before was rich, and the next day may never golf again, may not be able to do endorsements and other things that are going to allow him to pay his bills. Now, if that's not something that you can't create, I can create that right using that exact example. This is a guy that was perfectly healthy, got in a car, and look what happened to him. And he's a big name that everybody recognizes. Everybody knows Tiger Woods just got in a really bad car accident. That creates that sense of urgency that you lack, or your client lacks, or both of you guys lack. And that allows you guys to get back to the table quickly. And that allows a case to close in 2 to 3 weeks instead of going on for 4 to 6 or 8 or 10 weeks and then losing the client. Right? So the things you got to think about, are you too pushy? I don't think so, because I've been doing it long enough, and I've had 5 or 6 clients either get killed or fit into a Tiger Woods type car accident, or have a stroke, or have a heart attack before we got back together, and completely screwed out of whatever was going to happen. So I'm happy to be a little bit pushy. Are you too compassionate and lack the empathy for what could really go wrong? Right? Those are the things you need to be thinking about. Right? So the sense of urgency formula is, again, I am worried about you. Why is it that you don't seem to be as concerned as I am? Okay? Hey, listen, I don't know about you, but I'm concerned about your situation. I'm concerned about what could go wrong here. You don't seem to be upset about it, or you don't seem to be worried about it, but I'm quite worried about it because I've had it happen to multiple people over the years. That's how you create that sense of urgency. I'm just telling you, without a sense of urgency, you are an expense. People are going to run from expense, and they're going to run to revenue. So a listing agreement, somebody coming in to show a new home, those are revenue. They're going to run to revenue and cancel you immediately. They're going to cancel your appointment, and you're going to be last on the list. Their kids going to school, urgent. You, not urgent, right? Somebody comes into town, has to be picked up, or maybe they have to go to the post office and take care of something. Let me cancel my appointment with Chris Ash. Why? Because it's not urgent. It's something I can put off. But if it's urgent and somebody says, hey, somebody's coming into town and say, I got an appointment with Chris Ash, I got to get that done because that's urgent to me. And so revenue is always going to trump expenses. So you just have to know that. But if you create a big enough sense of urgency, you can overcome that. And that's really all I have to add today. I wanted to make it short and sweet, but I want to make sure you guys are creating a sense of urgency. I'm going to open it up to questions.
Anybody have a question? If you want to put your question in chat.
Or you can *6 yourself.
Alex, your sense of urgency examples are with insurance and disability and that kind of thing. How do you tie that to retirement planning? Something further off.
So let's talk about that. That's a great question. You're absolutely correct. I'm catered to long-term care. I'm catered to all the other insurance events because there's that intangible issue. The problem with retirement planning is people don't understand that what makes it work is time in the market, not timing the market. So, every day that you're not in the market, that sand's running out of the clock. And so you need to create the sense of urgency about how important it is to get into the market early and stay in the market for a long period of time, because you're not a wizard. You're never going to be a wizard. If somebody comes to you and says, listen, I got 6 years to get money in here for retirement, the only thing you can say to them is just put your entire paycheck in for the next 6 years, let your house get repossessed, and we'll see, we'll end up with a big chunk of money at the end of 6 years. You can't do much in 6 years. You can't hardly even get a double. It takes a 12% return for 6 years to get a double. That's as good as you could get. So you've got to create that sense of urgency over time. Just time is what sets that up for you. And you got to use the commission deduction, because let's face it, guys, I don't care how good people are at telling you they're going to fund something, they never fund it. You know, when they're writing a check manually, they never fund it. Commission deduction's where it's at. Anybody else questions?
No other questions? Okay. Alex, great
Thanks,
job.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
for getting it up. Thank you.
Okay, take care.